Hey everyone, thought I'd make a real quick video about some, I guess you call it like invasive species awareness. I'm on the lake right now where, this is all natural shoreline. The Michigan DNR owns all the shoreline, so this is all natural. But back through the channel where the property is and where there's houses, there's a pair of mute swans there. They're pretty aggressive towards Canadian geese, which those are native, but they're overpopulated. There's too many of them, but still a native species. And I would watch the mute swans, just be really aggressive to Canadian geese, chasing them. And then, they built their nest last year, pretty close to our dock. And so they would wander away from the nest, and we'd be out on the dock or on the bank, and they would hiss at us. And they don't really make any noise, which is why they're called mute swans. And they make kind of like a guttural sound. So anyway, I think it was sometime last year, I found out that they're invasive. They were brought over from, I think it's Eastern Europe and parts of Asia. And they're brought over in the late 1800s, early 1900s, just because people thought they were pretty birds and they wanted them as decoration in their pond, lakes, whatever kind of body of water. And this year, I noticed they were I think I just saw more times that they were more aggressive. When one of I forget if it's the male or the female that sits on the nest, one stayed on the nest when the eggs hadn't hatched, and the other one would roam the pond, bringing food back for its mate. It would go, the one roaming around would go to the other side of the pond to just harass geese, chase them away. And I get it wants to keep the geese away from its nest. But still really aggressive, and it's such a big bird. I don't know, like twice the size of a Canadian geese probably. I don't know the average weight of an adult, but it looks about twice the size. And then when the babies were born, which I learned that baby swans are called cygnets. The Latin word for swan is cygnus, and then they replaced the us on the end with et, so cygnets just means diminutive, just smaller swan, small swan. When those were born, they started getting really aggressive. They would, one of the pair would go around the pond with the cygnets and get food, and the other mating pair would, the other one of the mating pair would just constantly just fly at geese, and that's a pretty big wingspan, so they're flapping and they're trying to get off the water and splashing, making a lot of noise. It's not the noise that bothers me. I don't care about the noise, but just saying, it really scares the geese away. So there was one time I was on the bank and saw a swan coming over, and so I started filming it with my camera just because I had seen it happen so much. I was like, I'm gonna get this on video. The swan went right on the edge of the bank, and then it turned around, and I couldn't see it at first, but it got one of the goslings, and it had it in its mouth and was shaking it. I'm pretty sure it broke its neck. I knew they were invasives at the time, but still I thought, oh, that's just, that's nature. It's when, one animal takes advantage, especially predators that will hunt prey, and they're taking advantage of a baby because it's smaller and it's slower, and then maybe the adult, the parents can't defend their offspring against a predator. So I get that that's part of nature, is that happening, but just that showing that mute swans, like a visual representation of the negative consequences of them being where they're not supposed to be, being an invasive species. I don't know how you quantify this data, but I've heard they're one of the most aggressive bird breeds in the world. Yeah, I don't know what, just from observation, I guess. And I also heard from multiple places that they'll tear up vegetation from from water areas. Just no reason. I don't know if they're looking for food. It seems like they just do it for fun. They just destroy natural areas that native species rely on. And they're also really large, and so they're eating a lot more food than a Canadian geese would eat. So I have that video. I'm going to put it in here. Just heads up, it's pretty brutal. It's sad, but I think it's a good representation of why these swans aren't good to have around here. So I'll throw that clip in right now and then come back and close out this video. Yeah, you can see it's pretty brutal. The Canadian geese are having to compete with a species that isn't from here originally. So yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this, and maybe it'll get someone else thinking, or about invasive species, and do your own research. I don't know what else around here is invasive. I know there's some fish that are, like the other video, there's another video I did here on my channel that I kayaked to Turnip Rock in Lake Huron, and mentioned how the water is so clear, and the clarity is from zebra mussels. They were stuck in the, they were brought in, I'm blanking on the name, and the big freighters, the big cargo ships, where they keep the water in, and then they push the water out. So I guess the microbes from zebra mussels were in those compartments from somewhere else, and then they got pushed out, and they're coming up the St. Lawrence River through the different Great Lakes, and those zebra mussels, whatever size they are, microbes or whatever, hitched a ride, and then they were pushed out in the Great Lakes, and then we have a big zebra mussel problem now. Sure, it makes the water clear and prettier, but they are filtering out microbes that native species rely on. Yeah, see what kind of invasive species are around you. There's tons of, I feel like plants are a huge one. So many plants that are invasive. It's good to know, and even though people are the worst invasive species, just with the damage that people have done to the planet and natural areas, one person can make a difference. Like, there's the signs at boat ramps to, like, wash your boat off before you take it to another lake. So whatever there might be something in that lake that is invasive that isn't invasive or isn't in another lake. Just simple things like that, taking care of the natural world around you, the environment, and caring for it in spite of damage that's already been done. Just not being in the mindset of like, oh, there's far worse things that are happening, so this is okay to do. I think anything you can do or not do, if you're refraining from doing something that could do harm, just makes a difference. And I just love learning about the natural space here in Michigan, because there's so much of it, and there's so much life here. Thanks for watching, and yeah, if you have something to add, just let me know in the comments. Or if I got something wrong, let me know. I don't know everything. I might have been recalling something incorrectly. And I just love learning about things and then knowing the correct things, the correct information about things. So yeah, thanks for watching and see you in my next video.